Welcome to another edition of Cyclone InCYders alongside this semester's host Matt Van Winkle and the assassin Kassan, Mr. Daniels, join us again for another episode, returning from the grave as he comes back to Cyclone InCYders.
Hi.
Big weekend right here on Iowa State University. They talked about it all last week. Yeah. A must-win for Iowa State. That's exactly what they did. Number 5 came into Kansas and left with their first Big 12 loss of the season, and Iowa State defeated them 72-64 as a handed out gold T-shirts to the Cyclone Alley members, and it was a pretty incredible scene at Hilton Coliseum this weekend.
Oh man, it was crazy. We talked about that signature win that Iowa State needed to get, and they got that over Kansas. They're going to have a couple games coming up in the Big 12 schedule to get a couple more of those signature wins and make an even bigger statement for a better seeding in the Big 12 or in the NCAA Tournament, Dan.
Well, you know what? When you look at this Iowa State men's basketball team, you felt like they could hang with a team like Kansas and almost anybody in the country. They had the talent, they had all these transfers coming in, and it was just a matter of getting all the pieces in place, getting the chemistry right, getting production from everybody, and really that's kind of what we saw. Melvin Edgem, 15 points, Scott, 14 points. He had Anthony Booker, with all he does is make threes. He hit two big ones. I mean, all he does is just hit from downtown. It's really fun to watch. You had Bab, I think, was kind of underrated. I really had him under the ropes a lot. I kind of threw him under the bus earlier in the season because he really just wasn't producing. He had that really long cold streak earlier in the season, but he had some really good defense on Tyshawn Taylor, who lit up the Cyclones in Lawrence. So this was a team win. Obviously, the big production from Royce White, 18 and 9. He hit some of his free throws. The article came out this week about his struggles with anxiety. So all attention surrounding him, but really, Aaron, this was a very team-oriented win, and one that Iowa State and the Ames community can really hang their hats on for a long time.
Definitely, and it was, like we talked last week, a signature win, which you have to get into the NCAA tournament. And you almost felt like when we went down to Lawrence a couple weeks ago, that's a game Iowa State very easily could have won. The Fog Allen Fieldhouse, as historic as that place is, it's very tough. Nobody's going to go in there very often consistently to defeat Kansas, rather. But then I was really impressed with the way Thomas Robinson struggled on the block, whether they put Royce White on him, Anthony Booker come in. He had probably 3 or 4 travel violations right underneath the hoop. Started the game 1 for 6, and also Tyshawn Taylor didn't get going against Iowa State, and that was a big reason why Iowa State was able to come away in this one. But, you know, it's a great win for Fred Hoiberg and the guys, but as Scott Christopherson put it in the press game conference, 5 Big 12 wins is not going to get you into the NCAA tournament, and they got a big one Tuesday night as Kansas State comes to town, who's coming off a very tough loss to Oklahoma.
Big loss to Oklahoma. It's their second time they've lost to Oklahoma this season, so you know they want to come up to Ames and get a win tonight. It's going to be a big game. We talked about the keys for this season is that Iowa State needed to find, guys, they needed to come play together as one team, and they did that against Kansas, and that's really something that we've been needing to see out of these guys, and we finally saw that, and something they've been doing extremely well lately is rebounding the ball. They out-rebounded Kansas again up in Ames. It was 34-19 was the rebound advantage for Iowa State, and it was just a key component to that game, and I think they need to keep getting the ball to the hot hand on offense and keep rebounding on defense, and they'll get
Kansas State's coming in, like we mentioned, lost to Oklahoma, and it's not very often in the Big 12 you lose back-to-back games. There's a lot of parity in the Big 12. Sure, you got your Kansas, Baylor, and Missouri at top, but if Iowa State's going to stay in that fourth column, Dan, they got to stop Rodney Magruder for the Wildcats tonight.
15 points per game. He's basically taken the role of the guys like Jacob Pullen and Danny Clemente that they have in the past, these all-star, all-conference Kansas State players. Magruder is a guy, he's a really good player, and, K-State is kind of this team that is almost very identical to the Cyclones. They're basically right next to each other in the polls right now. Neither of them are in the top 25, but, K-State used to be in the top 25 before that aforementioned loss to Oklahoma, but K-State is a very physical team. They're desperate for a win. This is going to be a very big test for the Cyclones, especially coming off such an emotional win at home with such a great crowd. You really want to see what Fred Hoiberg has for this team, not just like game plan against Kansas State, but really just how does he get his team prepared again? Because this is a really quick turnaround. This game was only Saturday, guys. So you're coming in tonight in Hilton Coliseum, and thankfully they're not traveling or whatever. But it will be interesting to see, how does Fred Hoiberg get his team motivated again? How does they keep them going for 40 minutes and basically keep their head in the game? And if they fall behind, do they put their heads down, or do they realize what happened on Saturday, that they can push through adversity and win a game?
As much as it might not seem, football and basketball are very similar. You talked about earlier this year with Paul Rhodes, that very big emotional win over Iowa, and then traveling across the country to take on Connecticut. That's how you tell what your team's like and what your team's going to be. Fred Hoiberg's in the exact same situation right now. Very emotional win over Kansas, and if you can come back and make it 2 in a row, and then you got Oklahoma again on Saturday, 3 in a row, and then the schedule, as much as tough as it is to say in the Big 12, gets a little bit easier with Oklahoma State and another trip.
But don't count out those teams. I mean, those are teams that have definitely the ability to trip up a team like the Cyclones. They can do it. I mean, you saw Oklahoma State beat Missouri at the Gallagher-Iba Arena. I mean, the Big 12 is, like you said, it's parity. I mean, it's kind of what you say, the 3 teams at the top, Kansas, Missouri, Baylor, and then it's like the rest. It's like 7 other teams.
At the end of the day, you're going to have to win the games you're supposed to win if you're going to get in the NCAA tournament, right?
I mean, that's key. You can't look at this Kansas game and dwell on it. You got to keep going into the future and look at the Big 12 schedule coming up. Like you said, Iowa State needs to win the games they need to win. And I think a key to tonight's game is out-rebounding Kansas State, because Kansas State is like 17th in the nation in rebounds. They're averaging 40 a game, but Iowa State is not far behind. They're averaging 37 rebounds a game. So Iowa State really needs to clean up on the boards tonight to be able to pull off this win, and they really, on offense, need to get it to the hot hand. It's been Royce White. We saw that against Kansas. It's been Tyrus McGee. We've seen Chris Babb step up, so it really can be anybody. So they need to find the hot shooter tonight and clean up on the defensive end.
As much as you're not supposed to look ahead to games, it's okay for us because we're not going to be out there on the floor.
Exactly.
So let's go ahead and look towards Saturday as they go down to Norman, Oklahoma. If we can pull up the graphic on that one, Ben. Iowa State going down to Norman. Oklahoma just got done beating Kansas State in Manhattan, so a very, very good win for them. And now maybe they've got some confidence going. If they can string a few wins together, they can get out of the cellar of the Big 12 and promote their resume for the NCAA tournament. Possibly.
Boy, it's been a long time since the Sooners have been relevant, and I mean, it's almost since the Blake Griffin era. I mean, basically since he left, they've been kind of in the doldrums of the Big 12. But they still have some very key players. I mean, Stephen Pledger is a guy that comes to mind right away that can provide a nice offensive spark. You talk about going down to these away games. Fred Hoiberg talks about these plus-minus situations where a plus is a win on the road and a minus is a loss at home. So you try to protect home court, try to steal the one on the road. The Cyclones are looking to do protecting their home court tonight against the Wildcats, and then traveling to Norman to take on the Sooners. If, like you said earlier, if this team wants to think of themselves in an NCAA tournament, they need to win games, and they need to win games on the road. Sure. Saturday is a great test in Oklahoma. Not the greatest crowd in the world, but it certainly would be a pretty good environment and a pretty good Oklahoma team that they're facing.
Yeah, we saw Iowa State go on the road to play Texas, and Iowa State probably played one of their worst games they've played in the Big 12 this year. So I think it's key for Iowa State to go on the road and prove that they can win on the road. So I'm going down to Kansas, play a good game. It's been really close games on the road. They only lost, I think, by 6 points to Texas. So
it probably should have been a little bit more than that one.
Well, you think about the Royce Wright free throws. I mean, just him alone basically could have won the game for the Cyclones.
Yeah. And you think about it all year, Iowa State really doesn't have that win on the road this year. Probably their best win on the road, including conference season and non-conference season, is probably arguably looking at Texas A&M right now. They didn't go on the road and really beat anybody spectacular in non-conference play. So that's what Iowa State, and that's what the committee is going to definitely look for, is quality road wins and then signature wins.
And then we talked about it last episode, is that Iowa State did not have a very impressive non-conference performance. They lost to a couple in-state games, and we've talked about this a lot, but that really is the key to Iowa State getting into the NCAA tournament. I think they need to get another big signature win. Obviously, the Kansas win's nice, but like we said, Scott Christopherson pointed this out, you can't get 5 wins getting into the NCAA tournament. They need to get at least, I think, above 500, close to 10 wins in the conference.
And now this year is going to be different, Dan, moving forward for the Big 12 tournament. It's going to be a little bit different. There's going to be more teams with a bye. So if you can pull up the Big 12 standings here in just a second, Ben, if you pull those up for us. Who do you see really coming away and winning the conference?
Well, tell you what, just a point on Iowa State. If Iowa State goes 500 for the rest of their games, they have 10 games left. They go 500. That's 10-8 in the conference, and that puts them at 20 wins. If I were a committee member, I'd say that with 20 wins, with 10 wins in the conference, and a key win against Kansas, I'd say that's a tournament team.
Yeah.
But if you want to take a look at the Big 12 here, I mean, Texas Tech is pretty much a given, as they are the worst team in the Big 12. But, I mean, if you take a look at the rest of the teams, like we said, 4 through 9, pretty much equal. I mean, Iowa State, Kansas State may have an edge, but, you know, Texas, everybody's talking about Texas. You know, a stellar player in Jacobin Brown. You never know when they will get hot. I mean, they beat Iowa State in their house, and I mean, people are still trying to think that Texas might be a tournament team. So you look at those Big 12 standings and you think, you know, in the Big 12 tournament, I mean, one game, you know, Iowa State could easily run the table in this tournament and win the whole thing, or they can get bounced in the first round by an Oklahoma State or something.
No question, there's a lot of schedule left and a lot of games to be played and see what happens. But that just shows you Iowa State at a 5-3 record and Kansas State at 4-4 right now. That just shows you how important this game tonight at Hilton Coliseum is.
Exactly. It's going to be a big one. Fans are going to be out there. I think it was buy one ticket, get one free. So it should be a pretty good crowd at Hilton Coliseum tonight. Real quick, we got to hit our first break here. Iowa State, Kansas State. No score, just give me a winner.
Iowa State. I like Iowa State's chances tonight.
I like Iowa State as well. I think they win it by, it's going to be close. I think it's going to be within 10 points.
I'll go with Iowa State too. 3-0 sweep right up here on Cyclone InCYders. So come back after the break. The Iowa State women really kind of switching their season around. Got two big wins over Texas Tech and Kansas State, and fell in a heartbreaker down in College Station to number 14 Texas A&M. We'll discuss the rest of their season, and then our third break we'll go to the national scene in NCAA basketball. Stay tuned. You're watching Cyclone InCYders.
We can all be energy safe.
Back to Cyclone InCYders once again alongside Matt Van Winkle and the assassin Kassan joining us once again for this second segment. And like we always do, we're going to talk Iowa State women's basketball and the Bill Fenley crew. 2 straight wins late last week, over Texas Tech and Kansas State. First 2 Big 12 wins of the season, and then a tough one going down to Texas A&M. And the Cyclones really played well compared to the last time they played the Aggies. They ended up losing 59-33, arguably probably their worst game of the season. But they really turned it around. And like we were talking last week with this team, they're showing a little bit of a spark and playing for a lot of pride that they're wearing on the front of their jersey.
Well, absolutely. I spoke with Nikki Moody and Lauren Mansfield earlier this week, and they said, if they weren't going to be competing hard, they got to do it for the fans. If they're not going to be winning, they got to play hard for the fans, and I think they've been doing that the past few games. And I don't think you can look at this Texas A&M loss this weekend as a disappointment. I thought the Iowa State played really well in that game, and I saw a lot of good things, especially since how poorly they played against A&M at home, only putting up 33 points. Really just an embarrassment at home. You can't have that happen. They were having girls in single digits. Chelsea Poppins had been the only girl to be stepping up, but now you're seeing Lauren Mansfield, hit those big threes. We see finally Hallie Christopherson hitting some big threes, getting some quality points, some quality minutes from her. And what Bill Fenley had done previously is he was sitting Christopherson on the bench so she could get a better look at the game, and then bring her in, or 5 minutes into the game, and she actually was doing really well. She could see the game being played in front of her, and I think that was big. And I think Bill Fenley's trying to change things up a little bit. He was obviously, things weren't working when the team started the Big 12 season conference schedule 0-5. He knew something was wrong and that he needed to change something up, and I think the team got the message.
And as we'll go to you next, Dan, they got another big chance here coming up. Oklahoma State coming up to Ames, sitting at 12-5 on the season. If we can pull up the graphics on that game here really quick, 12-5 on the season, 4-4 in conference play, and really a lot like Iowa State in a lot of dimensions of the basketball game, averaging about in the high 50s for points, shooting field goal percentage in the mid 30s. Yeah. So, Dan, what do you see as Iowa State moves forward and takes on the Cowgirls?
I guess the only thing that you would say would be the difference between the Cowgirls and the Cyclones is that the Cyclones have 11 wins, and Oklahoma State has 12, and they're 4-4 in the conference. And Iowa State started the season with a 5-game losing streak. It's surprising for me, at least, watching this team for 4 years now, to see. We transitioned. We had Allison Lacey here. Then she was gone, but then Kelsey Bolte stepped up, and she was the best player and one of the best players in the Big 12. But then now she's gone, and really it's hard to find an identity, at least a go-to player offensively.
Besides Chelsea Poppins.
I mean, Poppins is good. I mean, she put up 22 against A&M, but
when she goes up girls like Brittany Griner, it's unstoppable.
Yeah, I mean, Kelsey Bolter was that player where you got her the ball and she created on her own. She could hit from 3, she could hit inside. I mean, she kind of was a do-all with the basketball. Poppins
leader on the floor.
Yeah, and Poppins is kind of just you throw it down low and hope she scores.
Right.
She's putting up 14 a game. She's a pretty good rebounder. She gets into a lot of foul trouble, and she committed a costly foul late, with seconds left against A&M, which lost them the game. But the Cyclones want to get back on the winning streak here and get back into the thick of things with the Big 12.
Yeah.
They need these wins at home.
Yeah.
Oklahoma State and Texas. I mean, these are games that if Bill Fennelly wants to get back into the NCAA tournament, even consider getting back in the NCAA tournament, he needs these wins.
Yeah.
And he needs to, basically the Iowa State needs to start, not sounding like dreadful or apocalyptic or anything, but basically if Iowa State ever wants to get back into the realm of possibility of the NCAA tournament, it needs to be like 3 or 4 wins in a row.
Yeah, and I think those wins need to come at home. And Aaron, they have a great chance to do that against Texas and Oklahoma State.
Definitely
tomorrow.
Oklahoma State, and Oklahoma State has a really stud freshman, Liz Donahoe. She's really a complete player, really giving something to the Cowgirls. And this Cowgirls team, let's not forget, really went through a tragedy at the beginning of this season. Everybody remembers it was the weekend the Oklahoma State football team came up here to Ames. So they're really playing for another purpose, and they realize basketball is not everything, but they're really playing for a purpose for their coach they lost earlier this season. But once again, let's touch on Oklahoma State, but then they got another big chance against Texas. Iowa State fell to Texas earlier this season, and Texas has a really good guard in Chastity Fussell, and the Longhorns, they're going to come up to Ames, and Iowa State's going to have to play their best game.
Oh, I agree with you, and I think, as we said earlier, Iowa State needs these home games too. If they want even a chance, I think, to get into the NCAA tournament, they need to get these games at home. It's going to be so tough in the Big 12 late in the season to get wins on the road because everybody wants to win at home. They want that, they want to protect the home court, especially late going into the tournament. So.
What else is there to say? This team needs to get wins. 2
wins isn't going to get it done.
It's basically just a matter of fact is that this team last year they were really good, and now with a key offensive player, now they're kind of scrambling. They're still trying to find chemistry and identity. Nikki Moody's come on as the late Big 12 Freshman of the Week this week, but she creates a lot of turnovers, but she does get a lot of assists. So it's really just a matter of how does this team come together and how does this team pull out these victories, basically grabs them and just really, that's all really all I need to say is that this. It's enough of the analysis. This team needs W's.
And as we continue moving forward, it's going to be a lot like it is on the men's side in the Big 12.
Exactly,
we can pull up the Big 12 women's standings here real quick, Ben. Tournament time is going to say a lot on which one of these Big 12 schools end up getting into the NCAA tournament.
Sure.
Of course, it's a given. The number 1 team in the country, the Baylor Bears, they're going to be in. But after number 1, Kansas right now is sitting at number 2, and it's really up for grabs 2 through 7.
Oh, yeah. Iowa State has a great chance to move up. They're not going to be in the top, I think, with two wins right now in conference, but I think they have a good chance to secure somewhere around the middle. They need these wins on the road. They need to protect home court, too. So.
And who's to say that they don't? Who's to say that all of a sudden, these players start playing well together, and the offense comes from all parts of the court, and they start stringing wins together. And who knows? Bill Fennelly is an exceptional coach.
Yeah.
He has the lifetime contract here in Ames.
Yeah.
If anyone's going to do it, it's Bill Fennelly.
Well, when Gary Blair was here, the A&M coach, they won the national championship last year, and he said a couple years before that, the team started just like Bill Fennelly's team did, and he was sympathizing with Coach Fennelly, and he said that a team could get hot at any time. It could happen to this Iowa State team at any time too, and I think they need to get these 2 wins here at home coming up.
Exactly. So Iowa State, big road ahead of them. Also a little bit of shakeup in the NCAA men's national scene.
Right.
As Missouri, number 2, ended up, like we said, lost to Oklahoma State. So they obviously dropped in the rankings.
And a big scare last night, too.
Big scare last night down in Austin to the Texas team we've been talking about. Jacobin Brown hits a bucket under a minute just to be answered right back by Missouri. After the break, we're going to discuss all that, take a look at the top 10 in the country, and also a little bit bracketology. Iowa State currently a 12 seed in Joe Lunardi's current brackets. So stay tuned. That's right after the break. You're watching Cyclone InCYders. Alrighty, welcome back to Cyclone InCYders alongside Matt Van Winkle and Dan Kassan on the end over there. Welcome back, Dan, for your final segment.
That's right.
Return to Cyclone InCYders. We apologize about our graphics machine isn't keeping up right now with us, so we won't be able to show you the AP top 10. But we'll still talk about it anyway. Atop, it's Kentucky sitting at 21-1, followed by Syracuse, Ohio State, Missouri, and North Carolina coming back up to number 5, rebounding after that embarrassing loss to Florida State. And then at the bottom in the old top 10, finally getting into the AP top 10, the Murray State Racers. We've been talking about them for the last 2 weeks, 21-0 out of the Ohio Valley Conference. And I mean, let's start with Murray
just keep the
State
conversation
right now.
of Murray State going.
Murray State right now. If this team goes undefeated, how high do they climb in these polls?
Oh my gosh, I have no idea. I mean, it's weird to even think that they're in the top 10. No one even knew who they were coming into this season. I didn't know who they were.
I think they were in some brackets.
Yeah,
okay.
They actually, I think, won
but
a game last year in the brackets, or 2 years ago, something.
Yeah,
I think they made the Sweet 16 actually.
Well,
so they got a little bit of experience there. So
I don't think they move much up and down. I think if they lose, they're definitely going to drop drastically. Right. But I think if they if they're undefeated, I think they maybe get into the top 8.
No, come on. Do you see Murray State? I look at these 10 teams here, these 9 teams ahead of Murray State, and I say that every single one of these teams can beat Murray State almost easily. Kansas, Michigan State, they might make it a little close.
Top 10? Why are they in the top 10?
You know what? Because they're undefeated. That's the only reason why.
So they're not going to move from 10
and
to 10?
you know what? I would put them at 10, too, because they're undefeated. They haven't lost a game all year.
So you give them
that's still pretty impressive.
But
even though you're facing all these directional colleges, you're still winning all your games.
Like you're saying, and they've only played one ranked school this entire season, and that team isn't even ranked anymore.
Memphis,
they beat them earlier in the season by 4. At the time, the Tigers were number 20. Murray State took them down. So really, they don't have that quality wins, but they have no choice.
Well, if you think about it, if you think about just hypothetically, taking the top 12 teams and making them all seeds. So like 1 through 4, those are your number 1 seeds. Okay, Murray State would be a 3.
Yeah.
A 3 seed? Really? No. There's no way I'd put Murray State as a 3. Well, then, I don't care if they're 91-0. They're not a 3 seed.
What's the lowest you would put them?
Like
a 1,
6.
I'd say 5 would probably be a pretty legitimate seed.
Because you got to look at their RPI too.
Yeah, I mean 4 would be a stretch. 3 is absurd. 6 would be kind of not really fair, I guess.
Right. It'd be something like you've seen a Missouri Valley team, which arguably the Missouri Valley Conference is a tougher conference than the Ohio Valley.
It's a grind, yeah.
And we've seen Missouri Valley teams at 5.
Drake
was a 5. And Creighton consistently projected a 3 seed as well in Joe Lunardi's brackets. Speaking of Joe Lunardi, enough with Murray State. Well, they're going to lose eventually unless they win the national championship. I'm not going to call it or anything, but who knows? Anyway, let's get back.
That conference is so bad.
Get right back here. Get right back on track here. They're in the Ohio Valley.
If you asked me before this season what conference the Murray State Racers are in, I would have never guessed Ohio Valley.
Anyway,
I would have guessed Division 2.
Done with Murray State. They're going undefeated this year and going into the tournament undefeated. That's the last thing we're saying on Murray State. Let's talk about Iowa State now in the NCAA tournament picture. We've talked in our first segment signature wins and all that stuff. A 12 seed taking on West Virginia in the Nashville Regional is where Joe Lunardi has them right now.
Yeah.
That's the old 12-5 matchup, maybe let's not get in there now, but that's a respectable seed for Iowa State.
Very respectable seed. I think Cyclone fans would be happy with getting a 12 seed in the tournament. I think they'd be happy with getting any seed in the tournament.
I think if they were a 16 seed, I think they would still watch.
But what I'm looking at right now is Iowa State received 3 votes in the AP polls this week. I think if they beat Kansas State tonight, and they go on the road to
They'll
beat
be
Oklahoma
ranked.
State, will they be ranked, guys?
Oh, easily. I mean, think about it. I mean, they'd be 7-3 in the conference.
I'd expect them to be about in the 19-20 range. I'd put them right there if I had to vote. I don't, so we don't have to worry about that. But
basically, they would be where Kansas State was last week
when they lost, right at number 20.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, that's a pretty fair statement. I mean, Kansas State, Iowa State, almost identical in terms of record, player. I mean, just kind of the
But they have
overall
to go 2-0 this week, otherwise they don't get ranked.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I would agree with that.
My second question is, do you think if this team has that label that they're a ranked team, do you think that hurts their chances of, keeping that momentum going forward, or do you think it helps them at all?
Oof, that's a good question. See, I don't see it's rankings. I don't know how much the players, the coaches really don't get into the rankings. I think the players really put them on themselves to say, hey, we're 21st or we're 22nd in the country. I mean,
I think,
and then it almost kind of puts this mental thing of expectations. Like almost now, it's like you have to win. Whereas a couple years ago, when you're unranked, it's like, hey, we have no shot at winning. Let's go out and win.
And you don't have the two numbers in front of your team, but tonight I think can answer that question.
Yeah.
Iowa State has all the confidence in the world defeating number 5 Kansas, and now a Kansas State team who comes in not ranked.
Yeah.
Iowa State's not ranked, but Iowa State, I think that feeling you're talking about right now has that little feeling of being ranked and being getting a little respect nationally. So it's going to be really interesting to see how this eventually comes out and we move into the NCAA tournament.
Yep.
Real quickly here, we're running out of time this afternoon. Got to get to the big basketball game over in Hilton tonight. Does Iowa State make the tournament, and what seed are they, Dan?
I say they do make the tournament. I say it's very fair to look at this team and say that they go 500 in the rest of the conference. I even went through the schedule and was like, yeah, that's a loss. That could probably be a win. And I looked through 5-5. 10-8, if they get 20 wins, I say 11 seed in the NCAA tournament.
I agree. I think Iowa State will make the tournament. They'll probably be somewhere around a 10, maybe even a 9 seed if they keep they're playing the best basketball they have been all season right now. So they keep that moving forward. I think they get a 9
I can't believe it. I mean, I'm the doubter. I mean, I'm the guy who always, at the Kansas game, I'm saying Kansas wins by 11, easy. And here I am talking about Iowa State making the tournament in.
I'm not going to brag, but I had a good feeling about that Kansas game. I'm not going to say I called it, but I had a good feeling.
Going back to the tournament here, I think Iowa State, if they do lose more than half, sneak in as a 12, don't be surprised if they do a little bit better than 500 throughout the rest of the season. Don't look at them about a 7 seed.
Lower your expectations when they do well. You're surprised.
Come March.
Yep.
I guess we're going to have to wait and see. We're out of time right here on Cyclone InCYders. Thanks for joining us. For Matt Van Winkle and Dan Kassan, I'm Aaron Bauer. See you out at Hilton tonight. Have a good night.